There are few games I have fonder memories of playing in my youth than Streets of Rage on the Sega Mega Drive. This is no doubt in part to its incredible multiplayer component that saw me and my brother spending hours actually cooperating with each other instead of trying to pull each other's hair out. At least until one of us accidentally hit the other on purpose, and the conflict escalated well past the confines of the game. But suffice to say, the beat-em-up genre has a special place in my heart. I used to love going to an arcade where I'd get a chance to play the classic TMNT or Simpsons beat-em-up. And I even enjoyed Final Fight, Double Dragon, and Battletoads in their time. Oh god, anyone else remember that Double Dragon cartoon?
For might, for right, we are Double Dragons!
Yeah, that actually happened. However, beat-em-ups were one of the games left by the roadside when 3D gaming really took off. There were a few standouts here and there like Dynamite Cop on the Saturn or Tekken Force Mode in Tekken 3, and The Bouncer on the PlayStation 2. But for better or worse, we never got a straight up Streets of Rage 3D. Certainly games with all kinds of close combat have been a staple of 3D games. It could be argued that something like Devil May Cry is a natural evolution of this game genre, but it's not quite the same. We also have games like Sleeping Dogs that bring the spirit of the beat-em-up genre to the open world sandbox game too. However, just like with pixel art and old school survival horror, the things that fell out of favour with large studios of the past trickled down and got picked up by the indie devs of now. I absolutely love how indies are just making their own dream fan projects these days, but also how they're expanding and really finding ways to innovate on a lot of forgotten game types. Of course, we got the incredible Streets of Rage 4, which gave us more of what we got in the first 3 games, but with gameplay so refined, the edges could separate molecules. And now we have this truly awesome 3D beat-em-up, Sifu. Made by French indie studio Slowclap. Honestly, between these guys and Don't Nod, I'm starting to think we should just let France handle video games from now on. It was first announced at the PlayStation State of Play in February 2021. The game features stylish art and incredible martial arts combat, with a player experience looking like you're that one badass cop in the raid but more Chinese. Suffice to say, I was intrigued. But I'm nothing if not frugal, and while I understand an indie developer working in Unreal Engine taking an exclusivity deal with Epic, I just don't want to buy games from their store. Yes, it's completely irrational. No, Steam are not the good guys, but that's just how it is. Show up and start swinging your dick around for no reason, and I might not want to be your friend. I still take anything they give me for free, but like I said, this isn't some higher moral stance, it's just irrational. Maybe I'll get over it one day. So, it was in 2024 when I finally purchased the game on Steam, and even though I was a bit strung out from 2 back-to-back playthroughs of Sekiro, I was definitely up for a challenge. And my god, it was worth it, because this game absolutely rocks. And here's why. This is Sifu. There isn't really all that much of a story to talk about here, which may surprise some of you as I've routinely said I'm a story-first kind of gamer. And yeah, Sifu is definitely a gameplay-focused experience. And in the grand scheme of things, were you to want to platinum the game, you'd definitely be spending more of your time in the arena mode than the story. Still, that's not to say that the story isn't there, or even that it's lacking in depth, but the setup is simple. A mysterious and powerful warrior named Yang, along with a collection of eccentric misfits, attack and murder their way through a kung fu school one dark night, in the pouring rain, somewhere in southern China, or maybe Hong Kong. This is actually our opening tutorial mission, and I love that all we get for an opening cutscene is the camera moving down and behind Yang, and nothing but a sound effect to indicate the game is on. No UI prompts telling us left stick to move or right stick to look, just direct, get into the game, get into the action. Our path of destruction eventually brings us face to face with the titular Sifu. And it would seem that this is something of a homecoming for Yang, who is a former student. It looks like a younger Yang trained here, and while he showed incredible martial arts ability, he completely failed to absorb any of the philosophy that his master tried to instill. making the old teacher wonder if he shouldn't have put the boy down before he got too strong. Their conversation ends in an epic battle, and just when it seems like Yang has the upper hand, okay, remember this shot right here. Trust me, they really want you to feel like you're playing a martial arts movie. As the old master fights though, his wisdom and skill ultimately bow to youth and vigor. As the death blow is struck, a helpless pair of stunned eyes stare out from some darkened place. With his old teacher slain, Yang returns to the school hall, and there, at the back of the room, he finds something. It would seem this is no simple matter of a wayward son returning for revenge against a father who turned him out. These people came to take something of great importance. At that moment, Yang calls for our hiding child to come out, and it's here we get to choose the sex of our protagonist. The child emerges clutching a strange talisman of sorts, and meets Yang's gaze. Wordlessly, the victor commands his henchmen to finish the job. Better there be no witnesses. Even so, as the gang leaves, the talisman in the child's hand lights up and his eyes open. It would seem this is a world with great power in it. Staring out at the pouring rain, at a life absolutely shattered, all sense of protection and stability in the world completely lost, the child does the only thing he can think of. He prepares for revenge. I cannot stress how beautiful this opening credits reel is. The Pak-mei Kung Fu forms are all performed and shot with great artistry, but then the movie seamlessly transitions into game as our hero stands against the memories of the people who destroyed their world. This is actually something of a brief yet stylish tutorial that quickly takes you over the basics of fighting in the game. There will be some more in-depth stuff later, but this is quite a nice overview, and a way to have a stylish cutscene without taking control away from the player for very long. Don't worry, we'll be talking kung fu and fighting soon enough. I mean, that's almost all there is to talk about here. And that's not a complaint. I mean, just look how cool all this is. But before we get to breaking into the gameplay systems, I wanted to talk about the detective board. It's a somewhat indirect method of telling a story. From a gameplay point of view, it's as simple as finding various key items around the map as you beat your knuckles bloody on all the fools who have the audacity to try and stop you in your quest. These items then get added to the detective board and can be observed later. Sifu has roguelike elements, which it plays with along with its story to better integrate all of it into a somewhat seamless gameplay experience. There are various concessions to reality that exist to make the game more engaging. The shortcut system is a great example here. In every level, you'll eventually come across a tough enemy who's carrying a key or two. These get added to the detective board and are permanently kept by your character. So, when you replay a level, even though it doesn't make narrative sense, you keep the keys and can skip large sections of the level in order to get to a boss faster and younger. This is also true of keys that open doors in previous maps you've visited. At the end of the first mission, for example, you'll encounter this door and won't be able to open it. The key to this room is actually in the final mission, and you'll have to replay the first mission again in order to unlock this door and get the final piece of the first mission detective board. So, what's all this stuff for? Well, it's mostly for humanizing your enemies. We know Yang and his buddies as being a bunch of stone-cold killers who murdered their way through a kung fu school one night in order to take something for themselves. They are classic movie villains like that. But did it ever occur to you that they might have their own motivations for doing what they did? That in their own minds, they were the heroes of their story, perhaps standing up to a system that they thought was corrupt or overbearing? Did it occur to you that as our hero grew into a young, capable fighter, his enemies would age and maybe become sick, repent of their wrongdoings, and maybe just seek to find some kind of inner peace before their own time came? Well, that's what the detective board is for. I won't say that it makes our villains specifically sympathetic, but it does give their actions context beyond that of simple comic book villains, and works well with Sifu's kinda secret ending that I'll talk about later. I won't go too overboard here because this is basically spoilers, but here's a couple of examples of things we learned from our investigation into Yang and his goons. So we know Yang took something powerful from the Kung Fu school, and as we play the game we start to get some idea of what that is. Yang has opened a kind of traditional medicine hospital or spiritual healing center somewhere in the city. Is this an evil healing center for evil people? It doesn't seem so. Is it exclusively for the super rich and corrupt? Not that I can tell. Is it a cover for some kind of cult? Again, it doesn't seem to be. Yang really is helping people. His healing is apparently miraculous too, and he's especially interested in the well-being of his friends. The botanist is a good example here. He is our first enemy, and has got himself involved with a gang that's producing a new and very potent drug, it seems. They also do shakedowns and terrorize people who live near their factory. The botanist himself is the man who cut the protagonist's throat, and seems to have gained some kind of power to make plants grow now. We discover through our investigation that Yang is deeply concerned for the mental and physical well-being of his friend. The botanist has a room at the healing center and is receiving regular treatment for some unspecified condition from Yang. The artist is just as, if not more interesting. Her work focuses on identity and duality, and specifically on twins. This is interesting because her battle has two very distinct phases in both moveset and appearance. One of the last items we can unlock for the gallery detective board is this picture here. It would seem she was once a twin herself, and something may have happened to her sister at some stage in her life. The second boss form is actually her sister emerging within her, kinda like a certain Malkavian vampire I once met. So this is a very cool storytelling device. It provides a lot of context for the actions of the enemies in the game, and for Yang's attack on the school and the man who once trained him and looked after him, as well as his own son, and it's definitely worth finding all these little tidbits of information to get the full picture of what happened. Okay, let's talk about fighting. I've been doing martial arts as a hobby for most of my life. Starting with karate in high school, I've trained in kickboxing, Muay Thai in Thailand, Wing Chun Kung Fu and JKD, Shorinji Kempo, a little Kendo, Filipino martial arts, and enough Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to know how absolutely fucked I'd be if I ever wound up on the floor with anyone that's even half decent at it. So while I am in no way a hardened fighter or any kind of master, I think I've some things of worth to say on the fighting on display here, and specifically Bakmei Kung Fu. I consider martial arts to be the most holistic form of exercise there is. It has all the benefits of yoga, but with the added harder exertions of push-ups, jump squats and bag training. When you stop to consider that the only two responses to stress that our bodies can react with are fight or flight, what better stress relief could there be than smashing a heavy bag or having a vigorous sparring session with your classmates? Better to do it in a safe space than outside, where people can die. If, like me, you're interested in martial arts as a hobby, then by all means take any class that isn't promising superpowers or no-touch KOs, as these are basically cults. Go there, meet people, learn the principles and have fun. Most of us go our entire adult lives without ever getting into a fight. And should you ever get mugged, it's as simple as handing over your wallet and walking away. There is no amount of money that you could be carrying at any time that is worth more than your life. And since you don't know what weapons an assailant could be carrying or how many people they've got hiding just around the corner, it isn't worth it. On the other hand, if you're looking to get into competitive fighting at any level, well, you need to be a little pickier about where you can train. You need to be looking at the kinds of martial arts trained by MMA fighters, those with a strong emphasis on sparring and competition. You need to be training good footwork, head movement, and covering, and you need to be pressure testing. If you go to a martial arts demonstration or watch one on YouTube, you'll see a lot of examples of people doing a single attack while someone else performs a counter. This exercise in and of itself is fine. You can learn about positioning and your attack options, how to break someone's structure, etc. And you could even take the exercise a little further with them feeding you a combination like a jab cross hook. But in the end, you have to spar. You have to see that it doesn't work the same as in these controlled situations, and if someone really is resisting you, you're going to be in for a much harder time. Fighting is rarely, if ever, a beautiful thing, and experience, especially experience actually getting punched in the face, counts for a lot more than a controlled one-step attack and defense. With all that said though, I have respect for Bakmei. I don't think it's a great martial art for people looking to get into competitive sports, but it definitely has some strong merits in terms of structure, speed, and positioning. If you want a really good analysis of it, check this video here. This guy is very fair and no bullshit, but also open-minded. Also, I've no doubt he could school me all over the ring on his worst day. I'm a new subscriber over there, but I really enjoy his takes. Bakmei is a southern style of Chinese kungfu. Northern styles have a big emphasis on legs and high kicks, with its most famous style being Shaolin. Southern styles have an emphasis on being in close and using the upper body for rapid punches and takedowns. The most famous of these is Wing Chun, and actually, can we have a Donnie Yen break right here? Donnie Yen breaks. They're a thing. Tell your boss. Benjamin Colossi, I apologize if I just butchered that name, is the real face behind the Sifu protagonist. He's a resident of southern France and a lifelong kung fu practitioner, which may explain how he became perfect for this project. Benjamin's Bakmei is a somewhat stripped-down interpretation of the art that focuses on directness. Fights are senseless, chaotic things, and if you absolutely have to get into one, then your top priority should be to get the fuck out of it as fast as possible. Ideally with all your appendages intact. So we have this very brutal and aggressive system with powerful offense and defense that is all about rapidly turning the tables on your enemies, similar to the kinds of things we see in Filipino martial arts, like those sported in The Raid. The motion capture work here is great, and when combined with this beautiful art style that the game is going for, we are whisked away into this incredible world of violence and dangerous people, but not a single firearm in sight. In the game we visit what could be thought of as a variety of iconic kung fu movie locations. The opening scene has a very direct reference to Oldboy, but also gives me vibes of The Raid, while the nightclub scene oozes with John Wick influences, and I especially love how it climaxes in a staff fight with Sean in a burning building. We have a big museum full of heavily armed guards, and decorated with all kinds of modern art, and an assault on a big corporate tower. All these locations are brimming with their own personality, and the enemies within each have their own styles and looks, with each level introducing at least one new style of elite fighter. In terms of movesets, I'd say the overall enemy variety here is limited. This isn't such a bad thing though, because as we'll talk about later, the combat is absolutely brutal. But in terms of outfits and overall variety of looks, they're all stylish, and it never really felt like I was just fighting palette swap versions of generic Guy 1, even if that is what I was basically doing at times. All this eye candy isn't here for you to just stand around and enjoy though. You're going to be outnumbered and fighting for your life from the moment the level starts, right up until you put the boss down, so you're going to need all the kung fu you can get.
よいか、武徳に至るには1にクンフ、2にクンフ、3、4がなくて5に。わかりました。
Now, don't get me wrong. Nobody is using Bakmei or any other martial art to fight off this many people. In fact, we can turn up the enemy aggression and shut off their turn taking in the game options to see how that goes. But this is a power fantasy, and it's an absolutely amazing one. A comparison game from another genre might be Splinter Cell. While it couldn't be more obvious in the modern world that a single highly trained soldier wouldn't last 5 seconds in situations like Sam finds himself in, There's just something about the way he moves, his get-up and tools, and the semi-realistic political themes of the game's stories that just have me feeling like, yeah, there really could be a guy out there who could do this. Damn, why isn't that me? It's the same here. Even though it couldn't be more obvious how quickly our hero would be dogpiled and choked to death on the floor in reality, the game is just nasty enough to leave me thinking, what if someone really could do that? Sifu's player experience was clearly an attempt to make you feel like the star of your own Hong Kong martial arts revenge movie, and the various elements that make up the gameplay loop combine to execute that with surgical precision. We've already talked about the art direction and the brutal fighting animations, but this game is much more than pretty textures and good motion capture. Anyone going in should be aware that Sifu is a damn challenging game. It expects a lot out of its players, and even at this stage with the main story squared away and many of the arenas unlocked, I still couldn't say I'm close to mastery of this system. Certainly I can play the base game very well now, but the last boss is still a massive jump in challenge, and while I can clear most of the areas with only a single death, a true deathless run still eludes me. Some of this difficulty is just how the game system works. Much like real martial arts, Sifu expects you to put in some work if you want to get something out of it. You can make moderate progress by holding block and bashing out a few attacks, but you certainly aren't going to be making a big impression like that. The other issue is the game doesn't communicate its mechanics very well, and this should be evident by the amount of "what the game doesn't tell you" videos you can find on YouTube. I got a lot of help from this video by Under the Mayo at the start, and I'd recommend you watch this yourself before diving in. You'll get your basics here at the wooden dummy though. There's a short list of moves and chances to practice them on enemies that are actually attacking you. You can also free spar with an enemy from any completed areas, including their bosses. This is how you're going to go from finishing a mission in your 60s all the way down to in your 20s. It's an absolutely awesome system and something I wish existed in Sekiro if I'm being honest. I really enjoy Sekiro's reflections and gauntlets of strength, but they're very all or nothing systems of practice. You load into a boss arena and fight it exactly as they come. If you die, you go through the whole death animation, get booted out of the arena, and have to scroll through menus and loading screens to get back in. This is the part I find especially annoying. Here in Sifu though, I can just spar to my heart's content. If I get hit with a brutal combo, I can just stand back up and try again. I can keep practicing uninterrupted until I've got the attack patterns and tells down almost perfectly. I'm still putting in the work, I'm still the one pressing the buttons, but it comes with basically zero frustration of any kind. Just like Sekiro, defense in Sifu is easily more important than offense. This is because you can't handle that much in the way of a beating yourself, and enemy punish windows shrink up very quickly after the first chapter. You can defend in two ways. The parry is what myself and fellow Sekiro fans will be inclined to go for off the bat. Nailing these certainly has the best outcome, but they carry the biggest risks. It's nowhere near as easy to see the attacks coming in Sifu as it is in Sekiro, and the combination attacks come in much faster with harder to follow rhythm overall. Even though we're still talking about a limited set of animations here, it can be very difficult to fight all-out parry. Landing those parries though will do massive structure damage to an enemy and leave them staggered so that they can be thrown or palm struck. Both of these can be followed up with devastating attacks. It can be easy to think of weaving as a half measure when compared to the parry, but I promise you, this move will be your bread and butter defense for a long time, and even after you start landing more consistent parries, there's still plenty of enemies and scenarios, especially in the arenas, where you'll be switching into it. Similar to how real fighting works, an attack is better evaded than parried. You can hold the guard button and waggle the right analog stick to weave your head or adjust your center line enough to avoid an attack. Basically, any direction other than up is fine, as up will cause you to lift your front leg, which is how you evade sweep attacks. While there are a few true parry masters out there, us mere mortals will content ourselves with a combination of weaving out of the way of various combination attacks, and parrying something bigger and more obviously telegraphed. Both evasion and parries leave enemies open to be countered, but parries have a slightly bigger window, and throwing people is one of the best tools we have in our arsenal. So let's talk structure. Structure works exactly the same as posture in Sekiro. It's an alternative health bar that when broken leaves enemies open to finishers, and this is the fastest and coolest way to clear them out. Using a finisher not only looks absolutely badass, but it also replenishes a small amount of your health. I have literally clawed my way back from the brink of death in this game through skillful play this way. If you know how Sekiro works, then you'll know a deflect does massive posture damage, which is also true of a parry here, and is another reason why you'll want to add them to your game once you're more comfortable with the enemy attack patterns. Parries are just too useful, with their structure damage and stagger to be ignored. You can also damage enemy structure by attacking them while they block you, but it's the combination of perfect defense and rapid counters that's going to yield the fastest and most stylish results. Structure applies to you though, and while having your structure broken isn't an immediate death sentence in the game, you are going to be staggered and vulnerable, leaving you wide open to being manhandled for a while there. Any attack that is weaved won't do any damage to your structure, and neither will a perfect parry. That is until you get to enemies with weapons. If they have a weapon and you don't, then even a perfect parry will fill your structure meter. However, it won't break until you make a mistake. If you have a weapon yourself, then you are back to being on equal footing with your enemies, but sometimes the only way you're going to get a weapon is by taking it from them in the first place. So, that's defense. Now let's talk about wrecking motherfuckers. Sifu has a 2-button attack system, a light and heavy attack, and these can be chained together to make various combinations, but there's also a lot of scope to freestyle by combining parries, pushes, follow-ups, and sweeps. At the start of the game, a lot of techniques will be locked away behind the skill tree system, and this, along with the game's life and shrine system, is where things start to feel a little roguelike. Now, Sifu isn't a roguelike, not even close, but it has some cool roguelike elements that can encourage full replays of the entire game. The biggest motivator here is the life system, which is oddly complex. Let's simplify it for a second. Imagine you have 10 lives to finish an entire game, no continues. You start mission 1 with 10 lives, and when you die, those deaths are permanent. So if you die 3 times, you'll start mission 2 with 7 lives. Now you could continue from here, or you could replay mission 1 and try to die fewer times, so you have more lives for the start of mission 2. This goes on through all the game's missions. Those 10 lives though are actually years of your life. Every time our boy dies, he can resurrect at the cost of his long-term lifespan, up until he's 75, and then he's done. However, the number that death counter increments by is exponential. Die once, your age goes up by 1 year. Die twice, it goes up by 2 years, and so on, until resurrecting costs entire decades of your life. You can reduce the death counter by defeating special enemies or spending XP at a shrine, but you can never reduce your age without restarting an arena. Your first time through a mission, and especially fighting a boss, is going to be quite the devastating affair, and you'll be looking quite old at that point. However, as I mentioned before, all those enemies are now available to spar with in the training zone, meaning you can get really good against them before you try again. More importantly though, every level has at least one shortcut that you can use to circumvent a lot of enemies and get to the boss a lot faster and a lot younger. The only downside to these is you'll pass up various shrines that are scattered around the level. At every shrine you'll get a full health refill, and you can spend either your level points or XP on a power up, or buy one of these that are available depending on your age. This power up will stay with you until the end of the game, providing you don't repeat any missions. If you repeat a mission, then you lose all your shrine bonuses up to that point. The last part here then is the skill tree. You can access this from your home or at shrines on missions. Here you can spend experience to buy skills that increase your attack options. Buying the skill works the same as buying a shrine upgrade. You can keep it until you decide to replay a level. You have to buy each skill 5 times to get them permanently unlocked, at which point they can even be passed on to new characters. There's a ton of insanely useful skills, and at this point in my Sifu development, I'm not sure I could imagine going back to playing just as the base dude again. being able to palm strike and chase someone with a chain punch before sweeping them down and punching them on the floor is too convenient, and it never stops being fun. There's moves like the snap kick, which is great for leading into combinations, the running sweep and the spinning kick combo, just to name a few that I find myself constantly going back to. Finally, we need to talk about weapons and focus. I think weapons speak for themselves. They've been staples of the beat-em-up genre and kung fu movies since they started. Almost everyone in the museum is packing one of these, and they are so much fun to unleash. Of course, there's just the absurd amount of health and structure damage you can do, but they can also be thrown at enemies, and there are some areas where it just gets kind of silly. And then there's the iconic staff, the coolest of martial arts weapons. And what kung fu movie wouldn't be complete without a staff fight in a burning building? Not Sifu, that's for sure. Focus attacks are the last weapon in your arsenal. These are powerful counters that will cancel out any other animation being performed at the moment. Basically, pulling the left trigger will slow the world down and bring up the focus wheel. From here, you can choose the attack you want to unleash. You can buy more focus attacks at the skill tree, but you may need to unlock extra focus bars at the shrines to use them. These things are lifesavers though, and can turn the tide of a tense battle very quickly in your favour. The biggest problem, as I've said before, is a lot of this isn't obvious from the outset. Tutorials are fairly minimal, which is both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, the game isn't getting ground to a halt and breaking our immersion just to tell us some new detail every couple of minutes. But on the other, not everything can be figured out intuitively. I mean, it's pretty obvious that stopping a baseball bat with your forearms is going to shake your structure much more than a punch or a kick. But there are plenty of elements that only become clear after you've played through each mission multiple times and seen how it works, or just watch one of those videos detailing all the obscure mechanics in the game. That being said, Sifu is a game that expects you to replay all its missions multiple times. If only to unlock everything on the detective boards, you're going to be jumping back and forth through the game, and in the process, you're going to start to notice how the shrine bonuses come and go, and the benefits of fully unlocking a skill versus just paying for it once. What I can tell you though is that replaying the missions multiple times has still yet to get boring. From the first stumbling run, to the 5th or 6th time going the long way to get all the shrines while trying not to die at all, just the fact that you need to keep elevating your game makes replaying these over and over so much fun. And that's before we even get to the arenas and the all new features those brought with them. Sifu's arenas offer some of the best and worst the game has to offer. It was added to the game in November of 2023, and thus the game's final form was revealed. Arenas are pure gameplay, with little to no story save what you can imply from the surrounding. The game recommends that you don't play the arenas until you finish the base game, and I can see why. The play here is much more advanced, and each arena has its own list of alterations to the base game formula that can make them incredibly fun to play, and also absolutely infuriating. One point of praise I have for the base game is it provides an incredibly challenging experience, but rarely becomes frustrating. Thanks to the training dummy and the life system, you never really feel like you're just beating your head against a brick wall when you're playing Sifu. That, unfortunately, gets thrown out in some of these arenas. And it's the main reason I haven't finished this part of the game yet. I just straight up don't like some of the challenges, and I don't really want to invest my energy in overcoming them. This is because, as I've said many times, I'm a story-first gamer, and Arenas mode doesn't have one. That doesn't mean they aren't fun, but I have little to no incentive to put up with what I would call absolute bullshit without a story. Since I seem to have stumbled into a somewhat negative rant, let's get it all out of the way quickly before I go back to praising the fun parts of this. I think by example, this early arena here in the rain is a great example of how they just push it too far with some of these. Here, we're meant to fight waves of these Agent Smith looking dudes, while dying only once in order to get all the medals. No problem, right? We've played this game enough, it should be fine. So what are my handicaps? No weapons, okay, that's fine. No health recovery on takedowns, harsh but still manageable. Time slows down when guarding. Oh cool, that should make it easier. It doesn't. Actually, it's the complete opposite. It completely destroys the timing and rhythm you have for weaving through enemy combinations, making dodging almost useless and leaving you with just parries. Parries alone aren't a problem with grunt level enemies, but each wave has at least 1 or 2 higher ranked enemies, and because they all look the same, you aren't going to know what their moveset is until they're attacking you. I could maybe be okay with the slow-mo if I could get my health regen back, or I'd be okay without the health regen if the slow-mo was removed from the equation, but the two together are a nightmare. I've tried multiple times to get through this, and I just don't have the mental energy to deal with it. But just get good, right? How about you incentivize me to? Got a story hidden behind this battle that I can uncover? No? Well, this is a job for some other mug then. But I have better things to do.
You know, boss, I spend hours looking through junk. Maybe you could spend a little more time in the junk pile yourself?
There are quite a lot of arenas where just by reading the description and the list of handicaps, I know I'm not going to want to deal with it. I sort of like the idea of the King of the Hill style arenas, and they are fun, but not fun enough for me to want to get perfect scores on them all. So that aside, don't go thinking that I hate arenas. There's still plenty of these that I really love playing, and have even replayed multiple times despite having got all 3 medals. The system is pretty straightforward. Each arena lays down a challenge. Maybe you'll have to attain a high score, finish the arena under a certain age, or complete a list of objectives within a time limit. There are 3 medals to get in each arena. If you finish with the best possible result, you'll get all 3. After that, only 2, then 1, finally 0. Of course, you are welcome to replay as many times as you like. Collecting enough medals will allow you to open the next envelope of missions. All the missions in each envelope take place in the same environment. These can be a nightclub pit fight, the rooftop of a building where you can literally throw people from the building, or even a rundown apartment block that's overrun with thugs. You'll need 100 stamps in total to unlock all the arenas, and as you can see, I'm not even there yet, but along with stamps comes currency, and this is the part that's pretty cool. All the bonuses and handicaps from the arenas are purchasable from here, and you can even apply them to the base game. This means you can replay maps from the main game with harder, more aggressive enemies, carrying an unbreakable weapon, or any number of debuffs that stop you from healing or rendering blocking useless, so you have to dodge or parry, and so on. This is the part that makes the game immensely fun, and gives each arena even more replayability than before. So, if you thought we were done with Sifu's story, well, not quite. And we are entering full spoiler territory here, but we aren't going to be here long, so don't feel bad about skipping this part if you aren't aware of what this is all about. The greatest revenge is to live well, to be better than those who hurt you, to rise above their level, and ultimately succeed where they have failed. Slaying our way through Yang's cronies will lead us to our final confrontation with him, where he tells us this.
話我知，為咗救心愛嘅人，俾着你會點做？唔通你唔會跨越紅線？唔通你唔想逆天改命？
Interesting. I wonder what drove him to seek this power and slay his master then. Well, you aren't going to find out exactly if you killed the previous bosses. You'll get a hint, but that's it. After the first phase of the fight, remember this? Yep, it all comes full circle. And our hero can slay Yang in exactly the same way Yang slew his father. But it is here that a voice reaches out and tells our hero that there is another way. So it seems we need to do a full replay, reset the clock, return to the very beginning of the story, and this time we need only to overpower our foes and not kill them. The trick here is to not perform the finisher during the boss fight when the prompt comes up. This can be quite hard in the heat of the moment when you're simply reacting to everything, but doing so will cause the boss to recover and attack you again. You must break their structure now. You cannot simply whittle down their HP, or you'll go straight into the killing animation. But if you do break their structure, you have a brief moment of clarity and a chance to spare them. You could call this an act of mercy if you want, our boy letting go of a little bit of the hate and rage that's killing him inside. But it is also a very clear message. I'm better than you. Your life was in my hands, and now it only continues at my mercy. I don't need to kill you, to stain myself with your sins to defeat you. Be gone, and never darken my door again. How you interpret this action is really up to you, but this is the key to unlocking the game's true ending. We get a somewhat extended fight with Yang, though at this point we can't actually lose. This takes place at the memorial site of his wife and his child. It seems that Yang wanted the healing power that was protected by his master to help save his family, but was ultimately denied it, and this is why he decided to take his revenge. The full extent of the old master's motives are never explained, but it seems he was once part of a group dedicated to stopping these powers from falling into the wrong hands. It was Yang's pain that led him to such drastic action, and that ultimately started this whole bitter cycle. When we finally break Yang's structure though, we spare him the mortal blow. But at that moment, our hero keels over and seemingly dies of exhaustion. Since Yang took the talisman from them earlier, this is permanent, and we see our hero ascend a mountain to sit at the top, having seemingly attained some kind of spiritual peace. It's a little abstract, but the whole game is, in a way, so there it is. I won't say that this is some deeply profound moment overall, but it is a satisfying conclusion to the battle, and it was worth replaying basically the entire game to get a chance to see it. In the end, enemies are defeated, lessons are learnt, and we all walk away a little better for the experience. And after the credits we get one last little twist as we see
Sifu.
So maybe Yang gave the talisman back to the protagonist and brought him back. Sifu is still installed on my computer, and I still play it a few times a week. I still haven't unlocked everything, and if I'm actually going to be honest, I'm not that interested in doing it. There's a few costumes to get sure, but overall, I'm just glad to spend a little time now and then smashing faces into walls, breaking arms, throwing people off ledges, and generally enjoying a little kung fu action in my free time. I don't need long. An arena needs 10 minutes, and I can jump in when I'm taking a break from projects or just don't feel like dealing with anything with a heavy narrative for the time being. Much like games like Sonic Generations, I suspect I'll keep coming back to this again and again, whether it be for 10 minutes or a few hours. It's all good. It's still absurdly fun and satisfying, and I just want to keep playing and occasionally pushing for that perfect run. Sifu isn't a game that's telling a profound story or making philosophical statements about life, the universe, and everything. It's a game about kicking arse and looking damn good doing it. Given that's clearly what Slow Clap set out to create, I'd call this a perfect 10 in execution. The game is beautiful, brutal, and it never stops being fun. Well, what a ride it's been, guys. The last couple of months have been relentless high-stress gameplay, and I've also been revisiting Doom Eternal Ancient Gods in my spare time. Another person I really want to thank for inspiring this video is the YouTuber Ranton. He's a former disciple of the Shaolin monks who makes a lot of interesting content about China, martial arts and games as well. Super funny and cool guy. Still, games aren't all murder and battle. It's true that conflict is at the heart of all drama. Even in your most chill simulations, there has to be something rocking the boat. Otherwise, why would you even get out of bed in the morning? So, after Sifu, I decided to shift gears. Shift them all the way down. Down a whole dimension. So let's drop from 3D to 2D and take the pace slow and steady. We still might wind up in a brief fight or two, but it won't be anything too taxing on the reflexes. Let's solve a few puzzles, explore a little town, and enjoy a cozy little slice of high school life in anime Indonesia. But don't worry, I can assure you, the world is absolutely about to end in a space for the unbound. Well, hey there. I see you hiding at the back there trying to avoid being ushered out of the door. Sorry friend, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here any longer. Summer is more or less in full swing here in Japan. The rainy season is lingering longer than usual this year, but there's plenty of hot, humid days to come. I don't have my main job in August as I work in a public school, so I'll of course be committing time to projects for the channel, getting a head start on my Halloween special video, and some of you may have seen this poll up recently. Well, the results are in and I've already started playing Thief 2014 for the first video in the series. Hopefully that'll be a good way to round out the year, but leave me with just enough time to make a couple of more chill adventure game videos, and something special for Christmas. Anyway guys, don't forget to do all the channel things, follow me on Twitter, the coffee account is here, there might be a Patreon or membership thing coming in the future, I'm still not decided on that yet, but keep an eye out. And why not go check out the Summer of Mark's Splinter Cell Chaos Theory video if you haven't already. Then in the comments there, tell him Arkham sent you. Until next time though, long days and pleasant nights to you all. May you find your towers and climb all the way to the top.